I, as a Christian, have more than cliche. I have more than just a theory that God might allow suffering for a greater good, is that I have history. The Bible describes a God who knows all things. All things.
Yes.
He knows all past things. He knows all present things. He knows all future things. But he also knows what philosophers call, he has middle knowledge. He knows all future possible things. So for example, Penny, I could have chosen not to come here today. You could have chosen not to have me today. And a billion different decisions would have followed from my one decision and from your one decision. And your life would have taken a different take. And then you would have affected other people in many, many different ways, just from the one decision to not sit here, you and I today. There are people who are watching who might otherwise have tuned out. And your life will be different now had you chosen not to watch this. God knows not only what will happen, but he knows what would have happened if you chose something differently. In light of that, I told my friend, in light of the fact that if that's the kind of God we're talking about, isn't it at least possible that he could allow, not cause, this is important, he does not cause the suffering, but he could allow suffering for some greater possible purpose that he's working out, whether it's 5 minutes from now or 50,000 years from now. You know, eventually he agreed it's at least logically possible. So then we came down to this and he said, but my mom. And I said, you know.
Brokenhearted?
He said,
Yeah.
no amount of philosophy answers that question.
No.
It doesn't. And I didn't want to give him that. And in that moment you pray. And for those who are watching and who've suffered some kind of loss, especially from a year ago, maybe you're not even suffering the loss of a loved one because they were in some ways victimized by this dastardly, horrible, evil deed. But maybe you're feeling the loss of your sense of security, of your sense of safety, of your sense of what it means to go to school, about your sense of what it means to be in a public place, about your place in this world, and how do you know this won't happen again? There's a million things you're suffering from because of this. It's not just the direct physical. There's a mental, there's an emotional, and there's a spiritual loss to that. What I want you to hear is that the philosophy can help to a certain point, but it only stops short because it's got to reach here too. So when I look at my friend, and I told him, I said, you know, it's a nice theory that God could allow suffering for a greater possible good. In other words, he works through this. He allows us our human free will. He allows us to act with free will, and that sometimes results in evil, but he works things out for good. It's a nice theory. Sure. Maybe a Muslim could say that, or a Hindu, or a Buddhist, or a Jew, or a run-of-the-mill theist, someone who believes in God but doesn't know what that means exactly. They could all say that God works in mysterious ways. Mm-hmm. It's trite and it's cliche.
Sure.
But I said, can I tell you though, that I as a Christian have more than cliche. I have more than just a theory that God might allow suffering for a greater good, is that I have history, provable history that shows me that God did allow suffering to happen to his own son, which is the cross, that Jesus dies on a cross to pay a debt of sin that I owe, not that he owes no debt of his own, but he pays it willingly on my behalf and undergoes the punishment for the sin for the entire world. Mm-hmm. He knows what it's like to have God's wrath for the entire world, all past people and all future people in one moment, which is why he cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me? It's not that he doesn't know. He's quoting Psalm 22. It's out of the anguish of the heart. He feels that forsakenness because we're supposed to, because of our sin, but he does it for us. But then through the resurrection of Jesus from the dead, he overcomes that, and he says that this forsakenness, this feeling that I have felt, I felt it for you so that you never have to. So here's what I said to my friend. I said, God might allow suffering for a greater possible purpose, and that's a theory. But in the Christian faith, God actually allowed suffering for the greatest possible purpose, the salvation of the whole world. He allowed suffering to happen for his son. So if I can know that he allowed it in the past, I can trust without knowing all the answers. I don't know why he let your mom die. I don't know why he let Oxford happen. I don't pretend to know these answers. And anybody who tells you they know is probably lying or guessing. But what I can tell you is I can trust God for what he will do with my suffering because of what he has done
with his own suffering. And that saved the entire world if they just believed.
Through his son, Jesus.
And that's his son. Mm-hmm. He didn't just say, I'll let someone suffer, his own son. And so you have the son who suffers on the cross, but you have the father who suffers having to actually forsake him. And as a father, I can tell you, I can't imagine a greater sacrifice. A friend of mine once said, as a mother, she said, if you asked me to sacrifice myself for my child, I would do it so fast it wouldn't even qualify as a sacrifice. But if you asked me to sacrifice my son for someone else, I would say no so quickly because I would never let my son go through that. And that showed her the Father's heart, how he gave his own son for us.